Good afternoon, everybody, and I'd like to say on behalf of Met Éireann, congratulations on the weather, but I am apologising for what's going to happen tomorrow. So, I am about the present. I'm afraid to say it's not really about climate, it's about the here and now. So, I am head of the Flood Forecasting Centre in Met Éireann, which I'm going to tell you why we do what we do. The obligatory pictures of flooding. The River Shannon flooding in 2015, extensive long-term rainfall events, no particular storms, well, 3 named ones, but the ongoing scenario as described by both Connors, on rivers getting higher in the winter. A little bit of rain continues and we get flooding in the Shannon. Lahinch in 2014, the waves actually hit over the houses and into the 2 streets behind. In Hurricane Ophelia, the wind caused an awful lot of damage around Cork. So, where are we? Well, this is the lovely Met Éireann building in Glasnevin, which some of you might be familiar with, and we sit on the 3rd floor. I'm going to give you an overview of the background and the timelines and how we came into existence, what flood forecasting is actually doing, and at the moment we're doing river flooding and coastal flooding. And the most important thing we do actually is communicate flood risk on an ongoing daily basis to our key stakeholders. So, how do we do? Well, just a little history lesson in Met Éireann. In 1860, just to begin with, Valentia, the first real-time observation centre, was set up for climate in Ireland, and it's still in operation by the OBS division in Met Éireann today. In 1936, we all got excited. We started flying over the Atlantic, and Met Éireann was established in Foynes in Limerick to ensure that people could travel across the Atlantic safely. We still have an aviation forecasting division. In 1948, we began to supply forecasts to the radio and newspaper, and hopefully you listen to us on RTE, and we also script all the forecasts for a number of radio stations too, as well as all the TV advertisements from the forecasting division in Met Éireann to this day. In 1961, the Central Analysts and Forecasting Centre, we got a nice office in 44 O'Connell Street, but the architects in the OPW changed their minds, and in 1979 they built an iconic building which we now still sit in. Then in 2016, the Flood Forecasting Centre commenced development in Met Éireann. So just a little history and time back. But in relation to flooding, there was a number of key points. You may recognise the man on the left-hand corner. This is Bertie Ahern in the Talca in 2002. The Talca flooded 2002 and 2003. At the time, there was no leading flood agency for flood risk management in Ireland, and the OPW stepped in with the Parliament report and recommended that they became the lead agency for flood risk management of Ireland. There was 15 implementation plans on that, and one of them was flood forecasting. Then a lot of those got developed, but flood forecasting did not. In November 2009, we got twice the amount of average rainfall in the month of November 2009 across the country, and parts of the country actually got 3 times the amount. The OPW then commissioned JBA to write a report about setting up a flood forecasting centre in Ireland, or strategic review of flood forecasting in Ireland. Now, in 2009 up till 2016, there was a little bit of a recession, which you all may be familiar with, and it was put on the back burner for a while. Then it rained again, basically. So the government then decided very hastily in January 2016, actually we'll dust off this report, and they established the National Flood Forecasting and Warning Service, which we operate under. But when Met Éireann were handed that, we noticed that it was very much focused on the rivers. So in 2022, we developed an additional strategy on the National Coastal Flood Forecasting Services to be developed as well. So the government decision of 2016 was the establishment of the National Flood Forecasting and Warning Service. The operational element of the service was to be in Met Éireann, which is called the Flood Forecasting Centre, and it was to be manned by hydro-meteorologists, very fancy job title, and they would be tasked with a mixture of fluvial and coastal watch over the country. The OPW was to provide guidance and standards to the Flood Forecasting Service, and on the right-hand side, if you're really interested, that's the corporate governance structure of where we sit. So the aims of the National Flood Forecasting and Warning Service is to ensure the delivery of our operational flood forecasting products and flood risk information to its stakeholders. This information helps the stakeholders to make impact-based decisions and take actions which will protect against the loss of life, and that will protect and mitigate against damage to property. A good day in Met Éireann after a storm is if no one dies. That is how we manage or measure our achievements. So the Flood Forecasting Division, we provide a valuable service to the people of Ireland to the provision of timely and actionable flood advisories and alerts. It's the goal 3 of the current strategy of Met Éireann to make Ireland's weather and climate preparedness strategy to deliver a high-quality national flood forecasting service. And to achieve this, we place the customers at the heart of our plans. So, stage 1 of the service went from 2016 to January this year. What happened? We recruited and trained staff to work in the Flood Forecasting Centre. We got to go onto the 3rd floor in Met Éireann, and we now have the best view in the city. The forecasters are not so happy. We identified and developed the operational fluvial flood models for use at a national and catchment level. We introduced national coastal modelling into the capacity of Met Éireann's suite of operational forecast models. We developed a common strategy for the National Flood Forecasting Warning Service, and we established interim operational arrangements. And then we wrote a little paper to government back in January 2024 to say all is done and we're now operational. So, what exactly is flood forecasting? Well, it's a nice, easy process, as you can see from this lovely process diagram. We get real-time data, we put it into our lovely models, and we produce products which we deliver to people. And the clients are all of you here. We may not have direct contact with you, but trust me, parts of the state are hearing about our message on a daily basis. Hydrometric inputs are critical to what we do. As Conor said, you need to monitor what's out there, and that is critical to what we do. And we analyse, and modelling is a lot of what we do. So we take hydrometric inputs from multiple sources and analyse and model the current scenarios. So in the Flood Forecasting Centre, we have the coastal models, the river models, and the outputs and the comms. We do it at a national and catchment level for the rivers at present, and for the coast at a national level. So, river modelling, which may be of interest to people here today. There is a high confidence that the maximum rainfall rate will increase as a result of warming atmosphere carrying more moisture, as Conor said already. A warming atmosphere carries more moisture, about 7% for every degree of warming, and as a result, heavy rainfall events are expected to increase in intensity. Understanding the complex interaction between the rainfall, the river systems, and the land characteristic is crucial to assessing and managing the risk associated with river flooding. So, hopefully people here are familiar with the hydrograph. And basically what we do in the rivers is we use mathematical models to model and estimate what the rivers will do. We use maths to model nature. But it's very important as a modeller to know all models are approximations. Essentially, all models are wrong, but some are useful. However, the approximate nation of the models must be borne in mind. So we do models, but we're not saying they're 100% accurate, and we will never, ever get to that stage, even with all AI. So the hydrological modelling. What are our key inputs? The rainfall observation data from our own networks, as well as others, as well as the discharge observations from the OPW and the EPA's networks. The EPA's networks have been used in our model build, and we hope to incorporate them in real time in the near future, thanks to Matt. So from that, we run models twice daily for the ECM-FWF weather model, using the deterministic and ensemble members, and 4 times daily for our own, what is it called now, harmony model. So they produce discharge at known points around the country. So how did we decide which model to run? We carried out a comprehensive literature review of all the hydrological models that would be suitable to this. We built hydrological models We carried out trials in the hydrological models, and we trialled an integrated system and produced a final report. So what have we actually got? We've got 36 catchment models in operation, as I've already described. But the model we used was the Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Institute model called HYPE. And the hydrological predictions from the environment is what it stands for. The model is semi-distributed and simulates water levels for precipitation through storage and flux. It describes the hydrological process in subbasins, but not purely physical bases, and it's more conceptual in nature. It's used widely operationally for flood forecasting, but it's also used for droughts, climate change, water quality, and hydromorphological alternatives. So it could be of value to the EPA and Irish Water as you move into this space. We have the country covered at 36 catchment models. Jen here can tell you more in details if you'd like to find out about the model. It calculates evaporation, snow storage, melt, soil moisture, groundwater infiltration, routing in lakes and streams along the rivers. And it is quick to run, easy to use, and easy to manipulate because everything is in text files. And with a bit of skill in Python, away you go. So the flood forecasting division sector builds the models and develops the remaining 24. We had a consultant doing the first 12, and then we got guidance and support in developing the whole country. It involved extensive work in collaboration with agencies in Northern Ireland, because we also got the 4 catchment boundary ones covered too. And the HYPE model is used by the North for their water quality monitoring and modelling. The flood moving models, its flood forecasting is data intensive. We have to manage a lot of data from different data streams, and the best way to manage that is to have an integrator. The integrator we ended up selecting was Delft's Fuse from Zaltaris. Fuse stands for their Flood Early Warning System. And here is an illustration of what that looks like. Lots of inputs from various agencies and maps and productions on an ongoing basis as the models run through multiple times a day. So we then had to, as well as our own catchment models, there was local flood forecasting models in existence, the Lee, the Shore and the Munster Blackwater, and we've incorporated them into our monitoring processes. As well as them, we have the EFAS, European Flood Awareness System reporting points as well. And here is a shot of EFAS on the day of Storm Babette. The purple means on the right hand, you can see for the south of the country, down in the Middleton area, means that it's going to exceed a 20-year flood event. So it was clearly illustrated in EFAS that something was going to happen in Cork on this particular day. And lots of excitement. We got a lovely notification, and we were in contact with Cork County Council throughout the event just to make sure that they had the right information about what was going to occur. So here is an insight into Middleton itself and the Little River, and it's over 20 years. Over 20 years is the maximum it shows in the EFAS system. And we are the Irish representative for the EFAS system, so if anyone would like to sign up, let us know. So what do we actually do in models? You combine the models together, we have the National Fuse system, and we output for flood forecasting. That's what we do in rivers. In coastal flooding occurs when sea level exceeds the level of the land at the coastline. The key elements are the astronomical tides, the storm surge forecast, the wave forecast, and the astronomical forecasts. So what we've been concentrating on is forecasting tides, winds, surge and waves, and the observation networks we're using are tide gauges, wave buoys and weather stations. We use the Marine Institution predicted tide tables for 24 locations around the country, and every day we have a map that shows you the high tide and 2 high tides and all these locations. We also have a projection for a year in advance, so we can see when the supermoons are on the way and when the tides are going to cause us most difficulty. Parts of Ireland flood on high tide alone, especially in the south and Cork City. We have a tide and surge model called the TSSF, which provides tide, surge and total water levels around the country for 18 discrete locations, as well as more detailed models provided in 5 locations. It's hosted on the ECMFWF supercomputer in Bologna, and it's a we use the ECMWF weather high-resolution model to generate this model. We're hoping to put in our own Harmony model in the next 12 months on this, and we use our own system, the IFAC system, to disseminate this to key stakeholders. And you can see we cover quite a domain. This is the domain in the model in the diagram there, so it's quite an extensive domain. We use all the information from the Infomar project by the Marine Institution, GSI, to input into our model. For terms of wave, we use the EC-WHAM model. It's used to model the coast. It's important that we have a wave model because the TSSF model only does tide and surge. And there's a potential in Ireland, because of where we are, to build, in the future, we're hoping to build more localised wave models to improve the capacity and our accuracy in our coastal flood forecasting. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a national coastal flood forecasting strategy, which was developed by Met Éireann in conjunction with others. It's to deliver a high-quality national flood forecasting service, the same as their overall objective of train reliable flood forecasting models for the Irish coast, and support and advance the coastal observation network for coastal flood forecasting. So, as with what we do on all sides, observations are critical, both in terms of coastal, weather, tide, wave and surge. The models we have to run are the coastal, weather, tide, wave and surge models. We have to have fancy supercomputers, which we've just built one in Iceland with the Danes, the Dutch, the Irish and the Icelandics now have all our weather operating models up in Iceland, and coastal models have the chance to go up there too. And the experts are needed to run these models. But Met Éireann didn't do this alone. We're working in conjunction with other agencies and developing an integrated coastal flood forecasting service with data and partnership agreements with the OPW, the local authorities, Irish Lights, the Department of Transport, the Marine Institution, Geological Survey Ireland and Uisce Éireann. We also work with our internal teams in the Forecasting Division, the Research Division and the Climate Service Division in Met Éireann. So once we've all the models done, we have to talk about the models. So it's communication and outputs. So this is a lovely diagram showing you very basically what we do. The meteorological forecasts are the key inputs to the flood forecasting models. Precipitation, wind, pressure and tide forecasts are the key inputs to our models. Then all the observation data is fed in, the meteorologists from the hydrological stations around the country, as well as the coastal models, put into our hydrological and coastal models, and we generate outputs that we then use and assess to decide what we're going to do. The forecaster then provides details to the local responders, and they go to the media when it's a little bit wet, and hopefully people then, emergency responders, and then the local action. So actually, how we felt best to communicate to our key stakeholders. The key stakeholders in stage one for the Flood Forecasting Centre were the local authorities. So we developed a severe weather and flood liaison management network. We appointed the purpose of these people was to be a point of contact between Met Éireann and the local authorities. They were a person to manage the stakeholder distribution list, a person who manages the method of communication, a sounding board for the induction of new products and services at the network meetings, and a person who reports impacts of weather events back to Met Éireann. This was established 3 years ago. We generally have about 6 meetings a year. We had our first in-person meeting last year, and it's a very useful way of getting our message out. They also get our daily flood guidance statement and other products. So what are the products and the outputs? So we're an operational service, so we publish daily flood guidance statements. You can see here one on the right-hand side. It's a 3-day forecast of the flood risk in Ireland on any given day, both for rivers, coastal and surface water. We also publish high tide advisories when there's a state of heightened flood risk. We publish flood advisories. We did our first one in February this year for the southwest of the country. These are more pinpointed and detailed notes about river flooding or possibly coastal flooding to give people more information. And we have operational products. This here tells you the current state of all the rivers in Ireland, whether we're in drought or in flooding or near bank. And then we have developed a mapping portal called iFix Anywhere to show and display and use operationally and give the message out to our stakeholders. And then we also respond to general queries. Because we're the National Meteorological Service, we can use Met Éireann's broadcast as well to get our briefings out there. We put texts into weather warnings. You may be seeing stuff about spot flooding, wave over topping and coastal. that's us. And we also carry out briefings to the NDFEM briefings during national emergency events. So hopefully you've seen a little bit of our texts here and there, and you've got an idea of what we do. We do attend these meetings and do all that kind of stuff. But where are we going? We will continue to deliver the flood forecasting service for Ireland. We're moving towards stage 2, which we're under negotiations as part of the NFFWS on where we need to go. We hope to develop a better observation network. As Conor said, it's critical to all this stuff that we have decent observations. We hope to develop finer model resolutions and build better working relations with our stakeholders. Thank you very much for your time.